This program is brought to you by thepodcastfactory.com.
Hi, my name is Igor Kheifets, and this is the List Building Lifestyle, the only podcast which delivers cutting-edge conversion strategies from the online trenches straight to your earbuds. Download the transcript of today's episode and all future episodes at listbuildinglifestyleshow.com. I also invite you to grab a free copy of the Wealthy List Builder Survival Guide at listbuildinglifestyleshow.com/survival. And now, once again, it's time to claim your list building lifestyle. The American dream is alive and well, folks, and my guest is living proof to that. An Armenian kid whose family escaped Soviet Russia, Bedros Keulian was blessed with an opportunity to grow up in the United States. Most people take their surroundings for granted, but Bedros was different. He knew this opened up the doors for him to be something, to do something, make a real difference. An opportunity he would have not had unless his father bribed the Soviets back in the 1980s. This dude is a true hustler. He's got what he calls the immigrant edge. And today he's going to transfer this immigrant edge onto you so you too can get shit done like Bedros. So Bedros, thank you so much for being here today.
Igor, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity, man.
Well, as one immigrant to another, I want to say that it's a true pleasure hosting you. And specifically, you mentioned the immigrant edge, which is a big part of your overall message. So I would love if you could share with our listeners exactly what that means.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, and I believe, by the way, anybody can install the immigrant edge within them. And what the immigrant edge is, it's what Arnold Schwarzenegger has. It's what Gary Vaynerchuk has. It's what just naturally is installed in me. And it's this hunger and burning desire to persevere through anything and to use adversity as an advantage to succeed and accomplish your life's goals. Where most people don't have the immigrant edge is, well, they haven't experienced enough adversity. So as I started to look to see what's so different about me, one of the things I've been very fortunate enough to be blessed with is I am introspective, meaning I will stop and just think about why am I this way? Why am I so fully transparent this way? Why do I get hate mail or love mail? I never get anything in between. It's either hate mail or love mail, which is fantastic. But I started to think deep about it, and I realized that there's a formula to it. And people go, man, you get fast results. Why? Because it's the same way that I used to eat. When we escaped Soviet Armenia in 1980, I was 6 years old. My father paid off the Russian government and we escaped and came to the United States. We did not speak English. We did not have any food. We did not have any friends. We did not have any money, a family of five in a brand new country. And so we immediately started dumpster diving in the back of grocery stores. And it was my job as the youngest, smallest one. My dad would push me into the dumpsters and I would fish out food, beverages that were expired or had gone bad but weren't fully rotten. And my mom would pick off the mold or the dead leaves off the lettuce and we'd eat what's left. And so when you only have a little bit of food in front of you and you're starving, what do? You consume it quickly. And so you do that for a long enough period of time as a immigrant child who doesn't have enough food. We never had enough. We never had enough money. We would always run out of money before we ran out of month. And I remember my dad having to decide if we're going to pay our rent for our one-bedroom apartment for a family of five, or if we're going to pay the water bill or the electric bill, but we couldn't pay it all. And so when you only have a little bit, you consume what you have quickly. Well, as it turns out, Igor, that piece of immigrant edge taught me speed of implementation. In other words, if you have something in front of you, take advantage of it. So much of us go through life gathering information, but never taking action on it. And so that's part of the immigrant edge is that speed of implementation. If I have food in front of me, I don't know if you're about to eat it, Igor, so I'm going to suck it all up because I don't know when the next meal is coming. This is how I grew up. Today, my life is very predictable and very abundant, and I'm blessed for that. But I still have that immigrant edge to lean on and I use in business and in my teachings. And so people go, well, what else? What other variables are there about the immigrant edge? Well, I said, I went to 3 elementary schools, 2 junior highs, and 2 high schools growing up. And so for me, it was pretty important to make friends very quickly because I didn't know how long I was going to be around. So if I moved to a new town, I didn't know how long we're going to be in that apartment complex or that town. And so, Igor, I had to make friends with you quickly. And so today, that Immigrant Edge skill is the ability to build rapport quickly, to bring value to your life quickly, to get you to know, like, and trust me so that we can do business. Or as a young man, a young kid, for us to be friends for as long as I'm going to be in town before we get kicked out of the apartment. And so all these things translated into the Immigrant Edge. And the third variable is that adversity is not something we should run away from. Now, I'm not saying, go to the edge of a cliff and jump, or if you see a fire, stick your finger in it. But I'm saying, I come from the fitness world. So I'm going to use this example, and everybody, whether you're in fitness or not, you're going to understand this. If you go to a gym because you decide to make it your New Year's resolution and you start working out with dumbbells and you're doing dumbbell curls, well, if you're using 20-pound dumbbells, after a while, after a few weeks, your biceps get stronger and you upgrade to 25-pound dumbbells. And you keep curling and working out and you upgrade to 30-pound dumbbells. So we know that resistance builds muscle and strength. Well, as it turns out, adversity is resistance for the soul, for the spirit, for the mind of the entrepreneur. And the more adversity that I put myself against, the stronger my adversity quotient goes up. So I build my adversity muscles. I build my emotional quotient muscles every day because I welcome and look for opportunities to fail, because those challenges and adversities build those muscles of entrepreneurship. And so all of that is the Immigrant Edge. And so when I speak or when I write or when I make a video, I try and take those concepts and install them into the audience who may have never had to dumpster dive. Grew up with friends from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade, same friends, and never had to go and remake friends every other year. But once I explain it to you, you go, holy crap, I understand. Build rapport fast and add value if you want to get what you want out of people. Speed of implementation is king because you can't just gather information. You have to apply information to get an outcome. So speed of implementation is king. And of course, if I want to grow quickly and time collapse my business or my marketing, then I have to build my mental muscles, which means I have to put myself against more adversity than my competitor or my opponent. And the greater the adversity weights that you emotionally and mentally lift, the faster those muscles grow and evolve. Make sense?
Wow, that's actually, I think that's the best analogy or metaphor that I've ever heard regarding resistance and turning setbacks into opportunities. I mean, Napoleon Hill was the first one I think ever heard saying how every failure, right, holds the seed of an equal opportunity. But the muscle building example is just, you can't argue with that. Right? It's just so common sense that you can't argue with that, which really changes your paradigm. And we spoke a lot about, on the show about the fact that we use pain to progress. Most people don't like thinking about the things that make them uncomfortable. But, I always encourage my audience to do that because that's where I personally tap motivation. And maybe that's because I too come from a really, I come from Ukraine, Soviet Ukraine, and that was a really nasty place to live in. And so it was always adversity focused. And that's where we tap the motivation. You never sat there on the rock dreaming of the lifestyle and the 4-hour work week. You were handling problems as they were coming in. It was mostly about survival. So I can totally relate where you're coming from. Now, what you call Immigrant Edge, right? Other people would call, I guess, just sheer willpower, perhaps. But I want to focus more on your content creation skill set because you're extremely aggressive, right? And we were touching this before the show. Most people are really vanilla. They're afraid to offend. They are afraid to push the lines. They are afraid to say the wrong things. They're so timid and scared that they end up attracting nobody. And so I would love it if you can share with us exactly where does that come from? How do you choose what to talk about in the videos? And are you deliberate about being really aggressive, or is it just a part of who you are at this point?
That's a really good question. So I'll start off this way. My good friend Lewis House, who wrote The School of Greatness, the guy's like, 6'3", 6'4". He is a giant of a man. Like, I'm 6 foot tall, and he stands next to me, and I look like a child next to him. But he is so sweet, so gentle, so soft-spoken. I can't imagine Lewis speaking in any other way, in his books, in his videos, on his podcast, in any other way. In fact, when I was on his podcast, with his podcast, you have to be in his studio. And so afterwards we went to lunch. And I said, all right, Lewis, come on, let's hear it, man. Bring it out. Bring out the monster. And he starts laughing. What are you talking about? You can't be, I mean, I've read your book and we've been friends for several years now. Come on, let's see the real Lewis. And as it turns out, I had known the real Lewis all along. That's him. There's no other way. If he attempted to be aggressive in his marketing, if he attempted to be, polarizing in some way, it just would not be authentic. And so the answer to you is, we don't need to try to be a certain way. Most of us ignore who we are and we try and be who we think the audience or the market is looking for. I believe in being fully transparent and being fully authentic. I'm the immigrant kid who there's at least a typo or two on every single one of my blog posts and emails. And so if you are a grammar Nazi, you are going to send me hate email. And the first thing I'm going to do is unsubscribe you and take you off my list and never deal with you again. I don't care to work with those people. If you did not get the message because you were too hung up on the spelling of weather versus weather, we're not doing business together. You are going to be a high maintenance client anyway to me. That's not what I'm looking for. And so I believe in being authentic and transparent, whatever that looks like to you. So I'm that immigrant kid who doesn't speak or write English well. I do speak English well enough, even though it's a second language for me. And you know what? I was raised like an animal. That's the truth. I'm the only person that I know in the marketing world that's been in a police helicopter chase. And I wasn't the one in the helicopter. I was in the getaway car. I'm not proud of it. But all these life experiences have made me into who I am. And I've gotten into enough trouble where I'm now grateful and thankful. And I believe that I have to out-deliver everybody else on goodwill and gratitude and value because I've been so destructive as a young man in my life. And so people go, man, for someone aggressive, you sure do a lot of good. Well, thank you. Thank you. I believe that there's got to be a balance in the universe, and I'm attempting to rebalance my life like everybody else. But the number one thing is, dude, be authentic. Be transparent. One, it's the easiest voice to find. You don't have to go, how does Lewis House speak? How does Frank Kern speak? How does Craig Ballantyne speak? How does Igor speak to his list? Because my list is similar. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, we all teach marketing. Marketing, for the most part, is boring. Whether you teach marketing to chiropractors, real estate agents, finance people, or in my case, fitness business owners, it's boring. And no one becomes an accountant or a chiropractor or a personal trainer to learn marketing. They want to just change people's lives with the gift that they have. At some point, they realize, oh, crap, I have a gift, but no one knows about it. And so I reluctantly will search Google to find someone who can help me market my accounting business, my chiropractic business, my personal training business, and they'll find me or whoever expert in their industry. Now, me and those other experts are teaching something relatively boring. Now, it's exciting to me, marketing, persuasion, influence. I love that stuff. But it's boring to the person who just wants to sell chiropractics or accounting or fitness. And so I found that the only way I could be interesting is to be authentic and transparent. The only way I can attract the type of clients and customers I want to work with is to be authentic and transparent, because I will likely end up attracting people who are like-minded and like in personality. So all of my clients are very loving, thoughtful, but a bit rough around the edge when you first meet them. But I promise you spend enough time with them, you'll see that they would bleed for you. And I'll take that guy or gal versus the one who says that they would bleed for you, but would actually run the other way at the moment of any catastrophe. So the bottom line here is to be authentic and transparent. And if you could just be yourself, you'll find the ideal clients who you are going to love to hang out with. And you're going to be blown away by the fact that, man, I'm running a coaching program or a mastermind, or I'm speaking at an event, and every single person at this event I would hang out with and grab a beer with because they're like-minded. What better?
Wow. Well, that's definitely, I mean, I think you're the first person on the show who recommends to be authentic and just be the way you are. I mean, I don't think even I recommended that ever to people, because I believe that most people are really too boring as they are. I mean, I consider myself really boring as I am. So I can admit that my, quote unquote personality online is a bit more, way more aggressive, way more, not a bit, just way more aggressive than it is in real life. But I see where you're coming from. So I guess my question is then, being authentic and being transparent, how do we find that unique voice that gets through the clutter to our ideal prospect?
The unique voice is not actually the voice. It is the story behind it. Now, let me give you an example. On New Year's Eve, we went to this restaurant in San Diego. Actually, it's a nice resort called the Grand Del Mar. It's the only place that I know of that has a helicopter pad built in Southern California. So people fly into San Diego and they take a helicopter into Grand Del Mar to eat at this restaurant called the Addison. And so my wife and 2 kids, we went and had dinner at the Addison. It's a 9-course meal, 4 hours, long process, arduous process to eat. I hate it because I'm that foreigner who says, just put the food down in front of me and get out of my way because I'll eat your fingers, right? And so here you've got people bringing in the food and telling us how these truffles were imported from the Himalayan mountains. And then they before they even shave the truffles on your food, Igor, they bring it to you in a wooden box that looks like a cigar box. And I kid you not, my wife and I still have a running joke with this. The guy, there's 3 truffles in there, like the little mushroom fungus truffles. And he opens and closes the box 4 times in front of each person at the table. So there was 4 of us, so that you can get the wafting smell of the truffles. And then he tells the story of how high up these truffles grow and what the climate is like and how rare they are. And now they're about to go take it back to the chef, so that Chef Bradley can shave them very thin, like almost transparent, so thin that you can almost see through it, and put it on your food and bring it back out. Now, that story made that truffle that much more delicious. Was it any more delicious than truffle French fries that I would get at TGI Fridays? Nope. But in my head, it was. And that's all that matters, is the story. So the point of this is, we're not looking for the voice. All of us have an individual story. You, my friend, as you say, you might be boring, but you have a unique story of an immigrant who's come from the Ukraine. And no one ever says, I'm going to Armenia or Ukraine to vacation to start an empire. We escape from there, don't we? And so while you might be boring, Igor, which I don't think you are, but you might look at yourself that way. Let's just say that's the case. Your story is so unique to you that it is so authentic to you that you can't help but love you. And so whenever I do a Facebook Live, for example, I might say, I go through my iPhone as I'm making my PowerPoint slides, because when I do Facebook Live, I have a giant TV screen next to me, and I have my slides next to me on TV. And the first 8 to 10 slides are what happened in the last week or 2 since my last Facebook Live. So, hey, here's a picture of my giant 90-pound American Mastiff German Shepherd dog in her kennel. And look who's in her kennel, my 9-year-old daughter. She climbed in there with Cookie and locked herself in by accident. And before I released them, I took a picture, and here they are. And here's a picture of me and Jeff Sherman and another friend from Disneyland, where I used to work, surfing just last week in beautiful Dana Point, and just giving people a peek into your life that I am that. Why? Because I surf. That's what I do. I want people to know that I surf. People want to know who's the man behind the message, or who's the woman behind the message. Again, marketing, business is boring to the people who buy it from us. So how can I make it more exciting? By being authentic and saying, look, I'm a husband, I'm a surfer, but I'm a horrible surfer. I'm a dad, but I'm the kind of dad that doesn't just rescue his daughter. I first take a picture and I put it all over Facebook and I laugh about it first, right? I'm that guy. And people go, oh, okay, well, you might be an a-hole. I don't want to deal with you because how dare you exploit your daughter that way? You should have saved her first. And then the other group of people go, wow, what a sense of humor. Like, she's locked in there with a 90-pound aggressive-looking dog, who, by the way, is a big teddy bear. And so no matter how boring you are, your story, just like those truffles, make you unique, special, and authentic. And people fall in love with your story, and then they buy your product, service, or knowledge.
Well, listening to your stories, Bedros, there's 2 things that come up for me for sure. They stand out really like a fart in an elevator, really. The one thing is you are self-deprecating. So you really don't take yourself way too seriously. We can tell that just from this interview. And 2, you don't hide the bad stuff. So you're open about, having your mother wash your head with gasoline, right? You're open about being in a police chase and not being in the police car. I mean, at least until later when they caught you or not. I don't know. So, right. So you're really open about your mess, if you will, your bad stuff. So can you tell us a little bit more about that? Is that a strategy? Is that something you do naturally?
Originally it was not a strategy. It was just, I guess my wife will tell you, we were at oh man, here it goes. And now it's going to be officially recorded. We were at so I took my COO and my operations officer. So we have our Christmas party here at our headquarters, and we've got about 40 team members. But my wife and I took my COO and my operations officer to dinner along with their spouses. And of course, you see their spouses once or twice a year at parties and so on. And so we're yucking it up and having a good time. And there's 6 of us at the dinner table. And I don't know how this topic came up, man, but I go, you know what? Listen, between the ages of 4 and 6, before we came to America, I was molested by 2 older boys. And that screwed me all up. And both sets of spouses looked at their respective, the COO and the operations officer, like, is he serious right now? And they know my story, and they nodded, yeah, he is. And he's fully transparent about that fact. Now, I did it because I just love creating awkward situations anyway. I think it's entertaining for me. My wife, of course, I look at her and she's squirming, right? But the story here is that at first, my transparency was just used as a way of entertainment for myself. I would just be filterless and talk about whatever's happened in my life. I soon quickly learned that people respond better to you when they realize you're not perfect. You're imperfect, just like them. We would not hold Superman so high up if there was no kryptonite.
There was no kryptonite at first. They added it later.
Right, exactly. And they added that because there has to be a chink in the armor. There has to be an Achilles heel somewhere, right? And so even from Greek mythology, there's that Achilles heel. There has to be kryptonite. There has to be the fact that whether I was molested and I had the deck stacked against me because I had so much rage and anger and shame. So people go, why were you in a helicopter chase? So I'll bring this whole thing back around. Imagine being molested by 2 older boys between the ages of 4 and 6 over and over again. And only coming to America saved you, right? My family never knew about it. And you grew up in this country and you start lifting weights and you get big and you get strong. And now you're this angry guy who's looking for trouble. That's how you get involved in a police helicopter chase. But soon enough, no matter how big and strong you are, there's people bigger and stronger than you, even if they come to you with guns and badges. And so ultimately I realized that I can't be an a-hole in life and expect good things to happen to me. And that's when I started changing my life in my mid-20s. And so that's my story. That's me being transparent. That's me being authentic. But I also found that the more transparent and authentic I am, people go, you know what? He shares that the deck was stacked against him. And if he had that much adversity and challenges in his life and he did it, what's my excuse? So if Superman didn't have kryptonite, we just wouldn't find him interesting because he's invincible. But we just hope secretly in the back of our minds that someone somewhere is going to pop out of a shadow with kryptonite, and Superman's going to have to figure out how to get past it and still win. And that's what we're rooting for. And so that's why it's so important to show the chinks in your armor and be fully transparent.
Yeah, we had Michael Haig on the show. He's the guy who consults Will Smith and his company on the storytelling on their movies, including some of the recent ones. And he shared exactly what you're saying right now, which just reaffirms that, which is we root for the hero to the extent of the challenge that he faces and the adversity he overcomes. So that's really big. Now, what would you suggest then to somebody who did not have much adversity in their life?
Well, I certainly wouldn't say go out and get molested and find a police helicopter chase to get involved. It's certainly not that. But the reality is go out and look for challenges. And so, since you've interviewed Craig, your audience probably knows Craig Ballantyne. Back in 2010, Craig and I run a mastermind group together. And he's a dear friend of mine. I look at him like a brother. And back in 2010, Craig is, he was just he was on a great riff with our 50 mastermind members. And he's just lacing into them with love, saying, look, you guys need to stop messing around. It shouldn't take you 3 months to set up an opt-in page. The reality is you guys need to cut your deadlines in half and cut your deadlines in half again. And so as he's doing this, I'm getting pumped up and I'm sitting right next to him and I grab my phone and I text my wife under the table and I go, honey, when is your next marathon? Because my wife runs marathons. Now, I should preface the story, Igor, by telling you that I proposed to my wife 14 years ago and God's designed me to lift weights and not run distance just because there's cars now and bikes. I don't know why. But I said, listen, if you marry me, I will run 1 marathon with you. 10 years had gone by and I had not run a marathon. And so after Craig's pump up speech to our clients, I got so pumped up. I was like, F this, I'm cutting my deadlines in half, just like he says, and cutting those in half again. I texted her. I said, when is your next marathon? She says, it's in San Diego in 6 weeks. It's 26.2 miles. I said, register me. I'm in. She said, okay. So I hired a running coach and I said, hey, I've got 6 weeks to train and finish a marathon. She said, just do the half marathon. At every marathon, there's also a half marathon. I said, no. I don't do anything half. I go all in. I eat everything that's on the plate. I do it all. And she said, well, you're going to get hurt. I said, that's okay. I've committed to my wife and I haven't followed through and I'm pumped up and inspired and motivated. I'm going to do this. So in 6 weeks, Igor, I trained and ran and finished a marathon. I didn't have any record-breaking times. I did do it in under 5 hours, just barely under 5 hours. But
is that bad? I'm not into marathons.
Let's just say Oprah at her fattest did a better time than This is the truth. And again, I'm being fully transparent. The credit to Oprah where it's deserved. So yeah, it was pretty bad. I mean, 6 weeks of training is nothing for 26.2 miles, right? So in fact, my wife stopped training just so she can run with me because she would have just run circles around me. And so long story short, after that, I realized, holy smokes, I could either sell myself on the story that God has built me to lift weights and build all this muscle and that I'm not cut out to be a runner, and that becomes my story, or I can just suck it up and put myself through a challenge. And it's funny, one of my best blog posts still is the 26.2 lessons that I learned, which is 26.2 miles of a marathon, 26.2 lessons I learned while running a marathon. Still one of my best, most popular blog posts, because you learn so much about yourself, about wanting to give up, about faking an injury, about where your mental threshold is, where your adversity quotient and the emotional quotient max out, and what you have to do to talk your way through it, or consider faking an injury. And so after that, I said, holy crap, I realize now I've got a pretty cush life. I need to keep putting myself through these challenges. And so I put myself through a 6-week rock climbing challenge. So I just take on a new challenge for 6 weeks and do it 3 days a week. I train for it. MMA fighting for 6 weeks. And I am not a fighter. I'm a lover. I can talk my way out of fights these days. I don't need to fight. I'm a closer, man. But you know, I hired a fighting coach and I went through 6 weeks of training with him. And it was amazing how quickly you learn things and you overcome challenges and obstacles and barriers and you have breakthroughs. And so people who have not gone through adversities, my friend, can create organic adversities for themselves by putting themselves through these 6-week challenges of fun and challenging and even scary stuff. The reason I got into surfing, by the way, was I was like, man, I'm afraid of the ocean. Well, I'm going to do a 6-week challenge and learn how to surf. Shame on me. I live in California. How can I not surf? So it was the worst 6 weeks of my life. I almost drowned 8 times, but now I'm a pretty decent surfer and it's been a few years now. And it's one of my most calming rituals that I do once or twice a week. And so, but every single 6-week challenge that I've put myself through by choice has given me new insights, new breakthroughs, and has helped me take whatever mental clutter that I've had in my life at that time and turned it into mental clarity. And my challenge to everybody listening is, if you haven't gone through adversity in your life, 1, be grateful. Number 2, create that adversity by taking on these challenges. It could be guitar lessons. It could be salsa dancing if you're just a horrible dancer. It could be stand-up, trying to do a 5-minute stand-up gig. That's my next 6-week challenge that's coming up. And it builds so much emotional and mental strength, man. It's amazing.
Well, and I can tell you this is such a proactive approach to life. I mean, I thought I was proactive in business, but when it comes to life, I just kind of wait for disasters to happen. So I had this problem with my lower back for a couple of years. And I didn't handle it, didn't do anything about it. I just suffered through the pain until one day a disc popped, and I couldn't walk for a week. So, that kind of pushed me into getting into exercise and getting back in shape, losing the extra weight and doing the necessary stuff. But that's sort of like, life forced it on me. And
Yes.
you don't wait for that to happen. You're just creating adversity, which is incredible. I've never seen such an active approach towards life.
Yeah, it's almost like instead of going into the gym once a week to get strong, what if I went in 4 times a week? Would I get stronger than my opponent if I went in 4 times a week? Sure. So I just time collapsed the process of building emotional and entrepreneurial strength.
Wow. Well, Bedros, it is obvious that you can motivate a cloud to start raining. And the one thing that I know that my audience needs more is not so much motivation, but more of like a loving father's kick in the nuts, or in the ass, just to get them moving, because they have all the tools, they have all the information, but they aren't really doing much. There's too much procrastination going on. So what would be your last piece of advice to the procrastinating, audience of this show?
Yeah, well, the last piece of advice would be imagine yourself 20, 30 years down the line now when your hair is far grayer and you're, in that place of near retirement or at retirement. No one ever sits there and goes, man, I regret marketing more. I regret building a bigger business. Everybody has regrets of not doing something. I regret getting that information on marketing and not doing it. I regret on knowing how to build a business bigger and not doing it. And so how many not regrets are you going to have if you just sit there in inaction versus taking imperfect action now and hopefully having zero regrets when you're on your deathbed?
Okay, guys, you've heard the man with the Immigrant Edge. So if you would like to find out more about Bedros and the possibility of working with him, because he can kick your ass, and shame you into finally changing your life, go to bedroskeulian.com or just type in Bedros Keulian in Google and a bunch of information and videos will pop up. Check him out because he is a true badass. Bedros, thank you so much for doing this today. And until next time we chat, have a great one.
You too, Igor. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The List Building Lifestyle. Make sure to subscribe on iTunes or Google Play to never miss an episode. Because who knows, just one conversion tactic we share on the show might double your list and double your business. Download the transcript of today's episode and all future episodes at listbuildinglifestyleshow.com. And don't forget to claim your complimentary copy of the Wealthy List Builder Survival Guide at listbuildinglifestyleshow.com/survival. This is Igor Kheifets, and until next time we talk, have a good one.
This is the podcastfactory.com.